bless you. Thanks. Good. Good morning, Kensington. You guys all right today? You guys doing all right? You awake? Awesome. Hey, as we get started today, I'm reminded of this beautiful, amazing truth that if we're in Christ, our names are written in heaven. We're going to celebrate that for a minute. So if we're able to, can we get on our feet this morning and just celebrate with this opening song?
run for cover. But the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven.
I believe in signs and wonders, and I have resurrection power. Still the miracle that I just can't get over, my name is registered in heaven. Yeah, my praise belongs to you forever. Oh, this is my testimony from death to life. His grace rewrote my story. I'll testify by Jesus Christ the righteous. I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. Oh, it's a reason to celebrate, guys.
Come together, sons and daughters, bought with blood and washed in water. Sing the praises of the Spirit, Son, and Father. Our God will finish what He started. Yeah, our God will finish what He started. This is my testimony from death to life. His grace rewrote my story. I'll testify by Jesus Christ the righteous. I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony. He's still working on it. Greater things still to come. Oh, I believe if I'm not dead, you're not done. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe if I'm not dead, then you're not done. You're not. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe if I'm not dead, then you're not done. Greater things are still to come. Oh, I believe.
This is my testimony from death to life. 'Cause grace rewrote my story. I'll testify by Jesus Christ the righteous. I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony from death to life. His grace rewrote my story. I'll testify by Jesus Christ the righteous. I'm justified. This is my testimony. This is my testimony.
Welcome to Kensington Church. I'm really glad that you're here for today's service. I'm Sam Frangione, our arts director at the Orient campus, and although you'll never find me sipping a pumpkin spice latte and Uggs, I'm more of a salted caramel cream cold brew kind of guy. There are lots of things I do love about fall. I'm a fan of pumpkin patches, cider mills, Friday night lights, and the relaunching of many things happening around Kensington. I have 2 exciting fall happenings coming at you. Consider this your personal invitation. First is Man Camp. I've attended Kensington's Men Retreat for 3 years now, and trust me, this is something that you want to prioritize. Man Camp is for every man in every walk of life. That means you. You are invited, and you should come for so many reasons. Ziplining, sports, fishing, kayaking, eating, great music, breakout sessions, and more. We're calling it Man Camp because we've been thinking about how a base camp is a place of preparation for a great trek or exploration ahead. It's a place to be inspired, challenged, and reminded that the journey we're on isn't one that we're on alone, but that God is with us and that we have a brotherhood of men walking alongside us too. In years past, we've seen that a single weekend is long enough for monumental decisions to be made, friendships to be built, and legacies to be transformed. So don't miss it. Join us at Spring Hill Camps October 8th to the 10th. Info and registration at kensingtonchurch.org/mancamp. Hope to see you there. The second invitation is for parents, particularly parents of little ones. We have 2 kids at home, and when you get the chance to take in some helpful content, you take it, especially when it's free. We have a free online faith and the family event happening tonight called Raising Littles. You've probably heard the saying that the years are short and that the days are long with young children. I can definitely vouch that the days are long, but perspective is important. These long days often can leave us exhausted and wondering how we could possibly create meaningful moments to teach them about Jesus. Please join us tonight for a time of encouragement as we align ourselves with God and make room for Him to speak into these chaotic days. This event is hosted by our very own Taylor Leal, our early childhood director at the Troy campus, with guest panelists who will share practical ways to bring Jesus into our parenting and to intentionally train little hearts. Register now at kensingtonchurch.org/faithandfamily. Let's return now to our service. I believe God has something in store for each one of us. We're in the 3rd week of our I Feel series and focusing on feeling conflicted. That's a feeling that I can definitely identify with, that internal wrestling and sometimes even indecision. Let's lean in and see what God has for us today. Thanks for being here.
Happy Sunday, everybody. You guys doing well? Awesome, good stuff. Hey, I want to welcome all of you here again, whether you're watching via stream or whether you are here in the room. And as you can probably tell, over the last couple of weeks, there's a lot of stuff that's going on. And something else that we want to let you know about that's going to be happening this coming Wednesday night is a gathering for our leaders and our volunteers who are part of our K-Kids as well as our student ministries. And this is an opportunity for us to gather to hear a little bit more about the direction and the vision of this coming year. But let me also say this, it's not just for our current volunteers and leaders. It's really for anyone who has ever had the desire, who has the passion to invest into our next generation. And that is something that we take very, very seriously here at Kensington because we want to provide our children and our students with every opportunity to connect with Jesus. But not only that, also to equip parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, guardians, and other adults as well to really be able to help children on this journey towards Jesus. And so if this is you, we want to invite you to come this coming Wednesday night. And let me also say, dinner is going to be served. Dinner is actually going to be from La Marsa. And so the worst thing, like worst case scenario, it's like have a great dinner, meet some great people, hear some amazing vision, and who knows what God will do. But if you are a current volunteer leader, we want to invite you to come. If you've ever thought about it, we'd love for you to join us as well. Also, if you remember, a couple of weeks ago, we provided our community with an amazing opportunity to really be able to give, to help with the relocation of families in Afghanistan who are looking to flee the situation there. And this work was through our global partner in that area. And one of the incredible things is, as Danny mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, is that you all, as you have been countless number of times throughout our history, you were so generous, and we were able to raise more than $200,000 towards this effort, which I think is astounding. But now we have another opportunity to be able to help these families as well, because we've made a decision to partner with a local organization called Samaritas, who will be resettling these several of these families who will be coming to our area in the very near future. And Samaritas, if you know anything about them, that they are a great, great organization, and our vision and our mission and their vision and their mission align so beautifully together, which is why we've made the decision to partner with them. And even this past week, I heard a great statistic about their work with refugees, in that 75% of the refugees they have resettled have become self-sufficient within 180 days. And if you know anything about this line of work, that is incredible. That's an astounding number. And so what we're looking for right now is that we are looking for teams of people who would be willing to make a 6-month commitment to walk alongside of a family. And if you've ever moved to a new area, if you've ever moved to a new country, you understand how difficult things can be, trying to learn the culture, trying to figure out how do things work and systems and all of that. But imagine having to flee the only home that you've known for your entire life at a moment's notice. And some of these families, they had to pick up their things and leave so quickly that they were unable to even just take with them necessities like their eyeglasses or medical supplies for themselves or their children. And so if you choose to take this step and say yes to this opportunity, some of the things that you may be involved in may be helping them move into their new home, helping them to get things set up in their new home, like who do I call to get the electricity turned on? What about the water? What about the garbage? Things like that. How do I register my children to go to school? What about doctor's appointments and internet, and just even showing them around the local area, things that you and I may take for granted, and just walking alongside of them. And so this is something that we would love for all of us and each of us to pray and consider. And this is an opportunity that we don't have to jump in alone, but rather you're gonna be with a team. But at the same time, you can do this as a family, you can do this as a small group. My family and my small group are actually praying about this and considering this right now as well. But one of the reasons why I'm really, really excited about this is that this is an opportunity for us as the people of God to be exactly that. Because when we look at the scriptures and when God talks about the foreigner and the stranger who needs help, he doesn't ever say to us, hey, you know what? You don't have to worry about those people, right? They'll figure it out themselves. But every single time he says, I want you to move towards them. I want you to help them. I want you to love them, because remember, at one point in your life and in your family's life, you were in their situation as well. So do not forget. And so this is a great opportunity, and I have seen this community step up over and over and over again in this way, which is one of the reasons why I am so proud to be a part of this community called Kensington. And so if you are interested in this, the next step is right up there, is to go to a virtual volunteer information meeting that's gonna be happening on October 5th at 7 o'clock. All you have to do is just go to that website and you'll be able to find out more information. But thank you so much for considering this, and thank you so much for praying about this as well. And so today we are in the third week of our series, I Feel, and it's been a great series thus far, and we have a great gift today because Danny's not gonna be teaching, I'm not gonna be teaching, but we have Shauna Schwaninger with us, who is one of our teaching pastors, and so can we give her a huge hand? Awesome. And this is what I was thinking this week, and I don't know if you probably weren't thinking this, but you might be able to feel this, because I feel like this is probably one of the greatest moments in the history of Kensington, and this is the reason why. We not only have one Canadian up here, we have two Canadians up here, right? And so I don't know if you guys are able to feel the goodness and the extraordinary blessing, and even for those of you who are watching via stream, I know it can translate through a screen as well. One of the greatest moments in Kensington's history, so thank you so much for participating in that. But in all seriousness, one of the things is that, Shauna, you are an incredible teacher, you are an incredible leader, you have been such a gift. You're such a gift not only to our Kensington community, but our teaching team as well. And if you are enjoying the series that we are in called I Feel, it is because of Shauna right here, because she is the one who proposed it. She has had a huge hand in creating it, informing it, and determining the direction of it. And so I'm grateful that you just said yes to being here, and how God is going to speak through you and just to our community here today. So I'd love to be able to pray for you, and then for you to get us into the rest of our day. Awesome. Would you join me in prayer? So God, thank you, Lord. Thank you so much for this community. Thank you, Lord, for the opportunities that you provide for us, Lord, like walking alongside and investing into our next generation. Also, really be able to walk alongside families who are coming, Lord, from Afghanistan, who have experienced so much pain and trauma in their lives, Lord. And through these opportunities, thank you that we can be your physical hands and feet and a physical embodiment of who you are to your people, Lord. And thank you also for the series that we are in and the way that you've already moved and spoken to our community. Thank you for Shauna, Lord, her heart, not only for you, but also for your people as well. Thank you for her and Ryan, their incredible family, God. And Lord, I pray that as she leads us today, Lord, that you would speak, Lord, through her just in powerful, powerful ways, and speak to our hearts and to our minds as well. And ultimately, Lord, that we as a community would move towards you. And so we thank you, God, and we pray these things in your son's name. Amen.
Amen. So has there ever been a time in your life where maybe you kind of wanted to cut a corner to make something happen, where you just were like, I could do this instead of waiting? Because sometimes waiting for the right timing seems like it's gonna be forever. It really can leave us feeling a little conflicted, a little confused, a little unsure of what we should do. And as we've said this morning, we're diving into week 3 of our series called I Feel, talking about how we can feel conflicted at times. And our desire is that today we would lean into finding hope and trust in God. And I think Psalm 62 just beautifully says it for us. It says, I will wait quietly before God, for my hope is in him. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress where I will not be shaken. My salvation and my honor come from God alone. He is my refuge, a rock where no enemy can reach me. Oh, my people, trust in him at all times. Pour your heart to him, for God is our refuge.
If my heart could tell a story, if my life would sing a song, if I have a testimony, if I have anything at all, never cared for me like Jesus. His faithful hand has held me all this way. And when I'm old and gray and all my days are numbered on the earth, let it be known in you alone my joy is found. Joy, my joy. Let my children tell their children. Let this be their memory, that all my treasure was in heaven, and you were everything to me. Never cared for me like Jesus. His faithful hand has held me all this way. And when I'm old and gray and all my days are numbered on the earth, let it be known in you alone my joy is found. I found my joy. I'm still in love. You're still enough for me. Still all I want. You're still my everything. I'm still I found my joy.
I think sometimes our heart needs to be reminded of that. That God cares for us. And that we're not alone. And that we really are loved. I mean, life can be so beautiful and full of such joy, but it can also be really hard and difficult sometimes. And to know that in any season, in every moment, that we are cared for by God. And that he sees us and that he understands what we're feeling. And that's what this series has been all about, is that we are feeling these things and that sometimes we can feel a little confused, a little conflicted. And I think if we're honest, sometimes we probably even question whether or not God really does care about us. And that's kind of left us in a place of going, I don't know. But the hope is that today, that we will lean into learning to trust God and discover that we can trust in who he is and his hope, and that our joy will be found in him. And that we will know in the depths of everything of who we are, that truly there is no one else who cares for us quite like Jesus. Please join me as I pray. God, I just pray for each one of us in this room and those who are watching online. I pray that we would know into the depths of our heart how much you care for us, how much you love us, how seen we are by you, God. And no matter where we're at and whatever kind of season of life we are in, Jesus, I pray that we would turn to you, that we turn to trust in you and who you are. And even when we don't always feel it, that we would know it because of the belief and trust we have that you are a faithful, ever-loving God. We thank you in your name. Amen. Amen. Well, it is just such a pleasure to be with you guys here this morning. And so at this time, I do want to receive our offering. When you give to Kensington, you are giving to our mission here. And it's a mission to see people experience the love of Jesus, just what this song talked about. And we do that so many different ways. There's local things, there's our global partners, and even as Andrew was mentioning, our partnership with Samaritas, that's just one of our move out opportunities. And we just want people to experience the love and the hope of Jesus. And so it's through your giving, and you can give by going to our website, you can go to the app, you can even text the word Kensington to 77977, or there's some on your way out. But we do want to say thank you. Thank you for being on mission with us and for your faithful giving. So like Andrew said, my name is Shauna, and I am a proud born and raised Canadian. And I have been married to my husband, Ryan. It'll be 20 years this fall, just giving a little info about who I am. And we have two incredible boys. I did bring a picture, there we are. Caden and Pax are their names. And truly, we have been on some wild adventures following Jesus. For over 2 decades, my husband and I were youth pastors. We spent a couple years overseas doing missions in New Zealand. And I am so glad that the last few years, I've been able to be a part of Kensington and on staff here, and that really I could be here with you guys this morning. So thank you so much for having me. So in this series, we've been talking about our emotions, but we've also have been looking at moments in the life of David. And David, as a young boy, he was chosen to be the next king of Israel. But then nothing really happened. Like, he didn't go off and learn how to be royal. He just kind of went about his life. He continued to help his dad, and then he actually went to go work for King Saul. However, King Saul became very jealous of David, and he actually ended up chasing David, hunting for him. So for years, we're talking 7, 8, 10, 13 years, David lived on the run. He lived in the wilderness, hiding in caves from Saul. And I have to imagine that he probably felt a little confused. I mean, he was supposed to be the next king of Israel, yet he was living his life on the run. Now, living on the run, though, some men gathered around him, kind of a community. It was around 400 to 600 men, kind of like a village. And these guys really became his support. And they, though, were not really happy with King Saul. They thought he should be gone. They were disenchanted. They were like, actually probably really frustrated that he still was king. And so David had these men, though, that really kind of came around him. And I imagine, though, after all those years, he's living on the run, he's in caves, he's got all these guys, he's probably wondering, like, what's up, God? I mean, did you forget about me? Is there something I should do? Maybe I should cut a couple corners. We could find a way to get me into, on the throne there. Or maybe God was like, is he thinking God needs me to actually do something? I just think there probably was a lot of questions where David was probably feeling really kind of confused and conflicted. And I think we've had those moments in life. We're like, should I do this? Like, maybe God wants me to do this and I can kind of make this happen. But in the same time, we're kind of like, oh, I don't know. And sometimes we get tired of waiting. I imagine David was tired of waiting all those years. I mean, it could be as simple as that there's so many different things. Maybe you are hoping and dreaming to find someone to get married, have a relationship, and it hasn't happened. And you're kind of like, God, hello, do you see me down here? This is a dream I have. Is there something I should be, like, can I do something different? Do I settle? Like, what do I do? And you feel kind of conflicted because you're like, I don't know. Or maybe there's a job you see posted and you're like, that's my dream job, yes. And you're like, I've been waiting for this. You've been working so hard. And then you see the qualifications and you're like, I don't quite, maybe I could just add a couple things to my resume. I don't know. But you're like, but I've been waiting. How much longer do I wait? And this is kind of where David probably is. He's been on the run, waiting to become king, living in fear for his own life for a long time. And so we're going to pick up his story today, and it's out of the book of 1 Samuel. And we're going to go to chapter 24. We're going to begin at verse 1, and it says this. After Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told David is in the desert of En-Gedi. So Saul took 3,000 able young men from all Israel and set out to look for David and his men near the crags of the wild goats. He came to some sheep pens along the way. A cave was there, and Saul went in to relieve himself. David and his men were far back in the cave. So here's Saul. He is out on one of his hunts to try and find David. And he grabs a couple friends, 3,000, and they go off to try and find David because Saul wants to get rid of him. But all of a sudden, Saul's like, whoop, I'm gonna go deep into that cave. And he does this, just a little pause thing. And he's like, and then literally just like a few feet back is David and all his men, which I have a little question. How big was this cave? We're talking 400 plus men. I don't know if my visual of Bible stories is just too small, but I'm like 400 plus men in a cave. And they're hiding back there because they know Saul is pursuing David. So they were already just chilling in the cave. They're like, hey dude, how's it going? Oh my gosh, do you remember last week when we were in the field and you tripped? they're just chilling in this cave. And then all of a sudden they hear something. Shh. Do you see who that is? That's Saul. Oh my gosh, Saul's in here. Shh. What's he doing? Oh gosh, what's he doing? They're in the cave with him. This is not what they expected. They're hiding in the cave, and all of a sudden Saul, the guy who is going after David, shows up. Saul is unprotected. There's no bodyguard with him. He's completely vulnerable, and I'm sure David's like, oh man. Oh, what does this mean? What do we do? I mean, this is the guy that has been trying to kill me for years. I wonder if this is my moment. Is this how I become king? Is this how God has planned it? And then David's own men start going, dude, we can take him out. Like, we could get rid of Saul, and you can become the king. David's own men. And I'm sure he's just like, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of going against God's law. I don't know. What do I do? And so we continue reading. It says in verse 4, the men said, this is the day the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish. So David's own men are like, this is it. Like, this is a sign from God. This is how you are going to become king. This is our moment. Now, I think that scenario is not that unfamiliar, though, to most of us. Not that you're in a cave with your enemy. If you have that happen, come talk to me, because that's really strange that you're hiding in caves. But that we have these moments where you kind of go, I think God led me to do this. This is a sign from God. But I think we have to be really careful. That uses an argument that says divine providence is an equivalent for divine mandate. You could think about it like this. Maybe someone is at their ends meet financially. There's nothing. They're like on their last penny. And they're out one day and they come across a wallet. There's no one around. Pick it up, open it up, and it's loaded with cash. Whew. I mean, this would solve a lot of problems right now. I mean, is this God providing? Then they see an ID. Well, I mean, I could just take the cash, throw the wallet down. What do you do? Is it God? And it's a moment sometimes where we kind of go, I'm not really sure. I'm feeling a little confused as what I should do. There's this inner turmoil, wrestle. And we found ourselves in situations like that, not maybe to that extreme, but where you're kind of just trying to decide, like, is this really something from God? Is this a sign from God? Or is it really that I should continue to wait? I should live in integrity and character. What does this look like? And I think we ask ourselves, well, maybe I could do something. Maybe I could just fudge it a little. Maybe I can cut a corner here or there. I mean, it would be for the good in the end. Maybe at your job, you've been working there for a while and you've been trying to work towards that promotion. You're hoping, you're working hard, but you see other people kind of pass by. Time just keeps rolling on and you're like, am I ever gonna move up the ladder? So you have an opportunity. You could maybe change a few things on a few spreadsheets. It might help you down the road. What do? We feel a little confused sometimes because sometimes what we want so bad can feel so strong. And you're kind of like, I just don't know. But then there's other moments in our life where I think we're confused and it's not so much of a moral decision. It's more just like you have option A and B, and they're both good, and you're like, I don't know what to pick. I mean, it makes me think of the other night, on Friday night, my husband got home from work, and we have a golden retriever. She's the best dog in the world. I'm sorry if you think you have the best dog. I do, okay? Her name is Sadie, and she is always very excited when people come home. And so my husband's home, and she's just like, she's just like, yeah. And then so then my husband gives her a bone. And so she always goes into our living room to eat her bone. So off she goes, but then she's back. She's just like, oh my gosh, you're here though. I want you to pet me. Oh, I need to go eat my bone. She goes off to no, she's back again. Like she could not decide. She was completely confused. She's like, oh my goodness, my person's home, but I want to eat my bone. Person's home that will love me. I want to eat my bone. She's completely conflicted as what to do. And I'm just standing there watching, laughing at her. But we have these times where we're just like, I don't know what to do. And I think this last year and a half, we've had a lot of those moments where we're just like, wow. I know for my husband and I, we looked at each other many times and we're just like, I don't know what to do. This pandemic has created like all these moments and we're just like, I don't know. I mean, early on, it was like, okay, this was huge, this is new, it was serious. It's like, do we have to bathe in Clorox wipes now? Disclaimer, you're not supposed to do that. Also, you could not find them, so that didn't work out. But you have these questions because you're like, I don't know, and sometimes there was fear involved. There was like this torn of, I don't know, I see that my family does this, but I'm not too sure if I feel the same way, or my friends, or my work's asking me this, and I don't know. There was just a lot of questions. And then things opened up and things changed, and it just kind of brought more questions. And then I think for any of us who are parents, we had that whole school thing we had to try and figure out. Now, for some of us as parents, we knew. You were like, boom, this is what my kid's gonna do, I feel confident. But others, this is how we felt. We're like, in person? You know? Because there was some worry. There was some nervousness. There were so many unknowns, and you're just like, I don't know. I feel a little conflicted about this. And then the pandemic has been like this ever-changing landscape. It really has kind of been a roller coaster of emotions. And I really just think it kind of heightened some of those emotions, especially feeling confused and conflicted. But that's not something new to us, because we have these moments. And I think for those of us who are Christ followers, it's also those times where you go, God, is this what I'm supposed to do? And it's discerning, is it that, or are you supposed to wait? Sometimes it's very clear. Other times you're like, I don't know, God. Like, where are you leading me? And it could be a small thing, or it can be huge, like life change. A few years ago, my family and I, we were in a season of transition. After being youth pastors for 2 decades, that chapter came to a close. And that was like very evident. We knew that very clearly. Then we were kind of like, well, what's next? And so my husband, Ryan, was offered a potential job down in Florida. And it was like up his giftings, his passions, like how he was wired. And there was even a potential for a job for me at the church, and it was Florida. Goodbye, Michigan winter. See you later. And so my husband went down there, he interviewed, he checked it all out, came back, we talked, and then we went down as a whole family. And we came back and we're talking and we're praying through this, and it was kind of like, okay, well, do we just take this job? We had already resigned from our other jobs. There was nothing else on the back burner. We have 2 kids, house payment, cars, bills. But there was like this tension. Well, we could just go do it. We could just make it happen. It's a job. Or do we not? It's a hard place to be. We've definitely felt very confused and conflicted, and honestly, we also had conflict in that. Because sometimes we don't know, and it's hard to navigate that. Because along with feeling confused, we also will sometimes have fear. We'll just be unsure, there's this unsettled, we can get really annoyed, frustrated. So how do we navigate that? How do we navigate when we feel those things? Well, David actually, I think, shows us a couple different ways and how he responded to moments like this in his life. And the first is that God's promises can be trusted. Now, for any of us who are Christ followers, you're probably going, yep, okay, cool, thanks for that one, Shauna, wow. But sometimes when opportunity and time just kind of keeps passing by, it's really easy to start doubting that. It's easy to start doubting that, oh yeah, God's promises can be trusted. I mean, just look at David's life. He's chosen to be king, and then years go by, and his life actually gets worse. I mean, he's living in fear for his own life, hiding in caves. It kind of makes you go, okay, God, like, what's up with that? What are you doing? When it comes to our lives, when we have these seasons, and it's easy to kind of begin to question God's heart for us. But that's why I think it is so important to trust in the promises of God. Our emotions are important. It's important to know what we feel and to understand that and to dive into that. But it's also important to know how to navigate those. And sometimes our emotions can mislead us. I know for my husband and I, we'll look at each other and we'll go, if we're tired or emotional, we go, we're not making any decisions right now. Because I can't always trust my emotions. And that is why it's so important to lean into the promises of God. Living by faith, that means we're trusting Him to be the guide when it doesn't make sense, when we can't see clearly, when things are confusing, and there's a lot of unknowns. It's saying, I gotta lean into those promises. But it's important then to know what those promises are. It's one thing to say, yeah, I trust in God's promises, but I don't have a clue what they are. No, we gotta know what they are to be able to trust them. And so I wanna share just a few of my probably favorites about God's promises. And the first one is this, that God's promise, he promises that in his presence, he brings joy. It says in Psalm 16, you make known to me the path of life. In your presence, there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. That in his presence, there is joy. He promises us to have an abundant life. In John 10:10, it says, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. God promises that he will always be with us. Always be with us. In Joshua 1:9, it says, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. And he promises that he is faithful. God is faithful. Deuteronomy 7:9 says, know therefore that the Lord your God is God. He is the faithful God, keeping his covenant of love to 1,000 generations of those who love him and keep his commandments. And that's just like a little snippet. There's actually hundreds more promises of God, but we have to lean into them and learn them and to be able to trust them. And we see David actually cling to these promises. He wrote many Psalms, and some of the Psalms he wrote when he was hiding in different caves. And this is one out of Psalm 57. He says, I cry out to God Most High, to God who fulfills his purpose for me. David trusted in God's faithfulness. That when God said, you're going to be king, he trusted in that promise. He didn't know how or when that was going to take place, but he trusted in the promise. Even when it looked like it wasn't going to happen, even when Saul is hunting him, even when he's in a cave, even when it was excruciating and difficult, he chose to trust in the promises of God. So for our own life, when we have these seasons where it doesn't make sense, we're feeling a little conflicted, God's promises can be trusted. But David also shows us that God's timing can be trusted. I imagine David probably stood in a cave more than once and asked God, how much longer? How much longer am I going to be living in fear? How much longer am I going to be on the run, just hoping that maybe I'll escape it? How much longer am I going to have to endure this? How much longer before I actually become king? And I imagine that many of us have probably prayed that same prayer. How much longer, God? How much longer do I have to be alone? How much longer do I have to endure this pain? How much longer before this cycle of addiction stops? How much longer, God? Where are you? When are you going to show up in this? I know I've prayed that. In the quiet, when the tears just stream down your face because you're kind of like, God, what? How much longer? And here in this story, we have David. He's in a cave again. And he's got his men with him, and there is Saul just a few feet away. And David's men are like, dude, you just got to get rid of him. Like, this can end everything. You got to get rid of him. And I'm sure David was so confused because he'd been living in the wilderness and on the run for years. He had to be so tired, like so weary. Just even that alone would have been a hard thing to navigate. His emotional state had been like, how do you decide in that moment? And then the guys that he trusts, that are his encouragement, are like, kill Saul, kill him. And David's going, yeah, but that's not God's way. That goes against God's commands. And never mind that Saul, at this point, he was a terrible king. Like, it would have been good to get rid of Saul. So is it such a ridiculous idea that they assassinate him? Maybe this really is God's plan. What would David do? We continue reading in 1 Samuel 24, and it says, then David crept up unnoticed and cut off a corner of Saul's robe. Afterward, David, conscience-stricken for having cut off a corner of his robe, he said to his men, "The Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, or lay my hand on him, for he is the anointed of the Lord." With these words, David sharply rebuked his men and did not allow them to attack Saul. And Saul left the cave and went on his way. So Saul left the cave and went on his way. Now, I have a couple questions about this. Saul was in there going to the bathroom, and a lot happened in that cave. A lot of conversations. I just kind of want to know how many Taco Bell burritos Saul ate that day, because he was in there for a while. And we're going to say the fireworks that he produced drowned out a lot of action. I mean, David somehow is able to sneak up behind him, which makes me go what kind of ninja skills does David have? I mean, is he kind of some sort of Mission Impossible stuff here? A lot happened in this cave, but David is able to get right up behind Saul. And he pulls out that knife. And I kind of wonder, did he pause? I mean, this is the guy that has made his life a living nightmare. All he had to do was and everything would be done. All of his problems would be solved. And he would be king. And not only that, but this is David. This is the guy who killed Goliath. This is the guy that they sing his praises. He's a warrior. He's just inches away from letting it could change his whole life. But David chose not to violate God's law. He chose not to injure or kill Saul. He chose not to take the throne by force. David chose to trust in God's timing. It's easy in our life when things happen relatively quick. But when it feels long and unforeseen, it becomes unbearable. It doesn't make sense to us. Sometimes I think we even get bored and we almost check out. We're like, God, forget it. We get really frustrated. We get irritated. We get anxious. And I think sometimes we even get angry at God. Because we're like, where are you? Why haven't you done this yet? We even see David express those same things in some of the Psalms that he wrote. Later on, he would go on to write a psalm where he talked about waiting and just his experience of God's timing. It's found in Psalms 31. It says, "But I trust in you, Lord. I say, you are my God. My times are in your hands. Deliver me from the hands of my enemies, from those who pursue me." David was able to trust in God's timing because of relationship with God. Now, David was not perfect. He messed up a lot. Read about his story. But he trusted in the relationship that he had with God. I wish there was a secret formula I could give you today. If you do step A, B, C, you'll know God's timing and you'll know exactly when things are going to happen in your life. I mean, that would be amazing. And I could probably make some money off that. But it's not like that. It really does come back to trust. But I'm also very aware that, you know what? For some of us, trust is a very difficult, complicated thing. And our trust with God comes through relationship with him. Now, any relationship, whether it be a friend, a spouse, a neighbor, relationships are growing. You have to spend time with the person to get to know the person. It's that togetherness that grows the depth of the relationship. And it's the same thing for us and God. If we want to trust in his promises or his time, we have to invest in that relationship. We have to spend the time with him. We have to have conversations with him. We have to listen. We have to talk. We call that prayer. We need to get to know him. We got to spend time in his word, because that is how our trust can go deep. It comes through relationship. Through a relationship with God, my husband and I wrestled through that decision whether or not to go to Florida. We chose not to. It didn't make sense, and that was a really scary no. And the thing was, after that, it wasn't like, oh, now we know what we're going to do. Yay. No. We were still confused. But we made a decision to trust in God's timing and his promises. It doesn't always make sense, but it's coming back and putting our hope in him. David continued to trust in God's promises and his timing. And I don't want to spoil it, but he does eventually become king. And in that same song that he talked about God's timing, I think he gives us a beautiful reminder for today. He says in verse 24, be strong and take heart, all who hope in the Lord. Be strong and take heart. Be strong because your story is not over. For some of us, we are in a place right now that is hard, it's difficult. Maybe you are confused and conflicted about a few things in your life, or there's just a lot of pain and it doesn't make sense. Or maybe you're in a place where life feels kind of peaceful. It doesn't matter. May we discover how to continue to lean into his promises and God's timing, because that is where we're going to find our hope. Because your story is not over. Because when we choose to do that, we're going to have a story to tell. And it's going to be a story that we can tell about how we've won some battles, that we've crossed some seas, and how God was always enough.
Hour is dark, and it's hard to see. What shall I do here in the roots, and where this will lead? Oh, but I know that down through the years, I'll look on this moment and see your hand on it and know you were here. And I'll testify of the battles you won, how you were my portion when there wasn't enough. Testify of the seas that we've crossed, the waters you parted, and the waves that I've walked, and singing, oh, my God did not fail. It's the story I'll tell, singing, oh, I know it is well. Oh, it's the story I'll tell. Believing gets hard.
That
Oh, you were my portion when there wasn't enough. And I'll sing the song of the seas that we crossed, the waters you parted, in the waves that I walked. You know, when we have this story, we go through this conflict and we see the faithfulness of God and we see His hand moving. We have a story that's a gift for the next generation. Earlier in the service, Tori was singing this beautiful song called No One Ever Cared for Me Like Jesus, and the words that she sang that just so resonated with my heart today was when she sang the verse, let my children tell their children. And that's the beauty of seeing the faithfulness of God. It's not just about us in this room. There's generations that are coming after us. There's generations, if we feel conflicted, if there's struggle in our generation, imagine those that are coming up. But they get to look at us and we get to point them toward the faithfulness of God. And when Shauna was up here, she opened up her Bible and she began to just rattle off the promises of God. I was thinking to myself, I was sitting over there, this isn't just for those of us in this room, it's for those that come after us. We get to point them toward the faithfulness of God. Yeah, there's conflict, there's struggle, there's gonna be things that come up, but we get to tell this next generation, we saw God faithful in our lives, we saw Him keep His promises, and we can say to you that He is faithful. Right on? Yeah. So we're gonna sing one more song together, and I would love it if we could, if you feel like, if you could stand with me. If you wanna stay seated, you can. I just want you to know there's freedom here. If you wanna lift up your hands and celebration, you can do that. If you wanna stay silent, you can do that. There's freedom in this place. But this next song, you may know it just declares that God has been faithful. Let's end our time together with this. You're the God of covenant, of faith promises. Time to time again, you have proven you do just what you say. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I remain steadfast and let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Let's declare this together. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness that you're faithful in the person of your Son, Jesus. We choose to put our trust and our faith and our hope in Him. Let's sing it.
I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground. He's my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. He'll never let me down. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting sun, I will praise your name. From the rising sun to the setting sun, I will praise your name. When I rise from the rising sun to the setting sun, I will praise your name. From the rising sun to the setting sun, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me.
Thank you, Father. Thank you for your faithfulness, God.
It's a great, great reminder for us to leave with today that in the midst, because I know for so many of you, myself included, there's so much going on in our lives, and sometimes it just feels like storm after storm after storm. But this song and what Shauna talked about is an encouragement for us to anchor ourselves in Jesus. It doesn't mean that our lives are going to be problem-free or pain-free or it's going to be any easier. But Jesus promises us that no matter what we are going through, He will carry us, He will walk with us, be with us every single step of the way, so that we would carry those promises into this week and that hope into this week as well. And so I'm grateful, Shauna, that you were with us. Can we give her a huge hand, everyone? Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. Hey, I also want to let you know, for those of us in the room, we have something immediately following this service called Troy Connect. And so if you are somebody who wants to learn more about this community, meet some of our staff, we're going to be doing that, gathering together in the chat room, which is the room just right outside in the lobby. Also, if anyone would like to receive prayer, somebody to pray with them, our prayer team will also be down front. But thanks so much for being with us. Thanks so much for streaming. Have a great rest of your weekend, everyone.